Right now, on a battlefield most Americans aren't even paying attention to, the entire rulebook of modern war is being rewritten, not by a superpower, not by a trillion-dollar defense contractor, by a handful of Ukrainian engineers with shotguns, spare drone parts, and a $300 budget that's making Russia's billion-dollar military machine look like it's stuck in the wrong century. And I need you to sit with that for a second, because what's happening on the Ukrainian front right now isn't just another chapter in this war. It's the moment historians are going to point back to and say, this is where warfare changed forever. Here's the thing, for months we've heard the same story. Russia has the bigger army, Russia has more artillery, Russia has more men to throw at the front line, and all of that is true. But numbers don't win wars anymore. Speed does, innovation does. And right now, Ukraine is out-innovating Russia so badly that Russian soldiers are being filmed on their own training footage, literally getting thrown across the ground by weapons they don't know how to use anymore. I'm going to walk you through exactly what's happening, the systems involved, the numbers behind them, and why this matters far beyond Ukraine's borders. Because if you think this technology stays in Eastern Europe, I've got news for you. It doesn't. So let's start with the moment that frankly says everything about where Russia's military stands right now. Picture this, a Russian training exercise. A mobile air defense team tasked with shooting down Ukrainian drones is desperate. Why desperate? Because nothing they have is working anymore. So what do? They rip a 4-barreled Yak-B 12.7mm heavy machine gun, a weapon designed to be mounted on a Mi-24 Hind attack helicopter, off the aircraft, and bolt it onto a bare ground stand. No recoil system, no stabilization, nothing. They aim it at an incoming FPV drone. They pull the trigger, and the weapon, designed to fire from a flying helicopter, not a fixed ground mount, unleashes roughly 1.4 tons of recoil force in an instant. The gun throws its own operator sideways. It spins a full 360 degrees on its mount, completely out of control, and starts spraying live rounds randomly in every direction. The instructors barely have time to dive for cover. By some miracle, nobody gets hit. Nobody gets. Let that sink in for a moment. This is the second army in the world duct taping helicopter weapons to the ground because they have no real answer to a drone threat that costs a few $100s to build. Meanwhile, on the other side of the front line, Ukraine isn't improvising out of desperation. They're engineering, testing, and deploying at a pace that should honestly terrify anyone still betting on old-fashioned military mass over modern innovation. And the numbers back it up. In June alone, just 1 month, Ukrainian forces shot down more than 8,000 Russian drones out of the sky. 8,000 in 30 days. That's not luck. That's a system working exactly as designed. So let's break down what that system actually is. I want to introduce you to a piece of technology called Ataman. It's built by a Ukrainian defense company called Varda, and it might be one of the most quietly revolutionary weapons of this entire war. Ataman is an autonomous shotgun-based defense system mounted on unmanned ground vehicles. Its entire job is to create a wall of kinetic fire that Russian drones simply cannot fly through. Here's how it works. At the heart of the system is an AI-powered optical detection unit called Dozer. Dozer uses 2 cameras to scan the surrounding airspace constantly. No human needed, no soldier standing exposed with a shotgun anymore. When an enemy drone gets within 50 to 80 meters, the AI locks on. It tracks the target. It makes the engagement decision, all within seconds, all without a person pulling a trigger. Once that drone crosses into the kill zone, somewhere between 5 and 30 meters, all 8 of the system's 12-gauge barrels fire simultaneously. The specialized kinetic rounds shred the drone's propellers and motors on impact. The drone either explodes midair or drops dead out of the sky. And here's what makes this genuinely brilliant. This system runs on its own backup power. It mounts onto the roof of a tactical vehicle in minutes. It covers more than 180 degrees of airspace above it, which means even drones diving in from directly overhead, the sneakiest attack angle there is, have nowhere to hide. But here's the part I find most fascinating. This entire robotic system was born out of raw human desperation in the trenches. Before Ataman existed, Ukraine bought more than 4,000 Turkish-made Hatsan Escort BTS-12 shotguns and handed them to soldiers as a literal last line of defense against incoming FPV drones. Elite units, the 68th Jaeger Brigade, the 413th Raid Battalion, trained soldiers to physically stand their ground and fire buckshot at drones diving toward them. Think about that for a second. A human being standing exposed, trying to shotgun a flying bomb out of the sky before it reaches him. That manual, high-risk defense is exactly what Ataman was built to eliminate. Now, the machine does what the soldier used to risk his life doing. No exposure, no human error, just a robot standing watch, 24 hours a day, waiting. And Ukraine didn't stop on the ground. They took this exact philosophy and put it in the sky. This next part is where things get almost cinematic. Ukraine has taken ordinary-looking drones and turned them into airborne predators specifically built to hunt other drones. It's called the DroneHunter system, again developed by Varta, and it's a kinetic interceptor mounted onto a larger, faster carrier drone. The engineering detail that makes this work is almost elegant in its simplicity. The shotgun barrels fire in opposite directions simultaneously, which cancels out the recoil entirely. That means the carrier drone stays perfectly stable in the air the instant it fires, something that would otherwise send a small aircraft spinning out of control. These hunter drones, using that same Dozer AI system, can detect an enemy reconnaissance drone from well over 100 meters away and quietly stalk it from behind. Once it closes to somewhere between 5 and 20 meters, it fires electrically triggered 12-gauge rounds, and the Russian drone drops out of the sky instantly. Now here's the number that should stop you in your tracks. A basic starter kit for this system costs around $300. $300. That's enough to blind Russian artillery guidance equipment worth tens of thousands of dollars. Each individual shot costs roughly €6 to fire. Think about the math here. Russia is potentially losing surveillance and targeting capability worth tens of thousands of dollars to a €6 shotgun shell fired from a $300 drone. These hunter drones aren't operating in isolation either. They're plugged directly into Ukraine's Delta digital battlefield management network in real time. That means a target can be identified by a completely different unit, a reconnaissance team a sensor kilometers away, and that coordinate gets fed straight into the hunter drone's targeting system instantly. More than 20 Ukrainian frontline units are currently using this system in active combat, integrated across more than 10 different drone types. And the results speak for themselves. Ukraine's 30th Mechanized Brigade took down more than 20 Russian drones using just a single shotgun-equipped drone. Units from the Azov National Guard Corps downed 6 Russian Molniya suicide drones back-to-back in the Donetsk region using these exact FPV shotgun-armed interceptors. 6 suicide drones, one after another, taken down by a modified quadcopter with a shotgun bolted to it. This is the kind of asymmetric advantage that doesn't need a Patriot missile system. It doesn't need a Stinger. It needs ingenuity, and Ukraine has been producing that faster than Russia can adapt. But offense is only half of this story. Let's talk about what happens when Russian drones actually make it through and slam into the wall Ukraine has built around its armored vehicles. For years, tanks and armored vehicles across this war have been wrapped in crude steel cage armor, passive metal netting bolted on top of vehicles, hoping to physically deflect an incoming drone strike. It worked sometimes, but it was reactive, dumb, and full of blind spots. Ukraine just replaced that entire concept with something active and intelligent. It's a 32-round net launcher system developed by a company called ArmaSpec Technology, and it's currently being tested on BRDM-2M armored vehicles. Instead of one static cage, this vehicle carries 32 individual net launcher modules, positioned at different angles to create full 360-degree coverage around the vehicle. Here's how it plays out in real time. The vehicle's optical cameras and radar sensors detect an FPV drone diving in at lethal speed. That data goes straight to a central processor, which calculates the drone's approach angle in a fraction of a second. The correctly angled net launcher fires explosively, releasing a wide ballistic net into the air directly into the drone's flight path. The net tangles the drone's propellers instantly. It loses all aerodynamic control and it crashes harmlessly just meters short of the vehicle it was trying to destroy. What I find remarkable about this system is that it doesn't even require you to remove the old passive cage netting. You can layer this active system right over the existing armor, creating a multi-tiered defense. So if the net launchers ever run dry, or if Russia sends a coordinated swarm attack at a single point, that old-school cage is still sitting there as a backup layer. Russia has tried to respond. A company called TechCrim has developed similar net firing systems, but their range tops out at just 30 meters, and they require manual operation, meaning a person still has to trigger it in real time under fire. Ukraine's system does all of that autonomously, and does it faster. The strategic impact of this cannot be overstated. For months, Ukrainian armored convoys had to slow down, scatter, or hide because of the constant threat of FPV strikes from above. Now, with active net defense, those same convoys can move boldly and quickly again, which means uninterrupted supply lines and the return of real armored offensive power on the battlefield. I want to step back from the individual systems for a moment because the raw statistics here paint an even bigger picture of what's actually happening on this front. In June alone, Ukraine's unmanned systems forces destroyed 32 critical Russian air defense installations through precision strikes. That brings the total number of Russian air defense systems destroyed since the start of the year to 195. It was also confirmed that in June, Ukrainian forces struck more than 200,000 Russian targets and that deep strikes into Russian-held territory have nearly doubled. Here's what that tells you. While Russia's air defense shield is cracking wide open, Ukraine's own defensive network is getting sharper and more precise by the month. Ukrainian air defense is now intercepting somewhere between 92 and 96% of the traditional propeller-driven Shahed suicide drones Russia sends across the border. 92 to 96%. That's not a leaky defense. That's a wall. And it's forcing Russia into a very expensive, very telling decision. Since their standard propeller-driven Shahed drones are getting shot down almost every single time now, Russia has been forced to shift toward jet-powered Shahed variants, drones that fly 3 times faster and at much higher altitudes, specifically trying to dodge Ukraine's interceptors. But here's the catch. These jet-powered drones can no longer just fly a straight line to their target. Russian forces are now forced to plan multi-stage flight routes, weaving through gaps in Ukraine's radar and electronic warfare coverage, hoping to sneak through undetected instead of just blasting straight at their objective. To make matters worse for Russia, they've had to add new seeker and target detection modifications to these Shahed drones just to survive Ukraine's defenses. And despite economic pressure, Russia is scaling up production of these expensive jet-powered variants at the Alabuga manufacturing facility. But that expansion has actually created a bottleneck, cutting into their ability to keep producing the older, cheaper propeller-driven models at the same volume. So Russia is now stuck spending far more money for a weapon that has to fly further, fly smarter, and still has a shrinking chance of hitting its target. This is the definition of an arms race Russia is losing. Here's where this whole story crystallizes into something bigger than just weapons and statistics. Russia and Ukraine have taken this drone war in 2 completely opposite directions. Russia's approach is about raw industrial mass, massive factories, long-range volume production, cheap drone swarms meant to simply wear down Ukraine's defenses through sheer numbers, the same way Russia has approached warfare for over a century. Ukraine's approach is speed. According to General Syrskyi himself, Ukraine currently holds roughly a 1.5-to-1 advantage in FPV drone usage on the tactical battlefield. And that gap isn't just about quantity, it's about how fast Ukraine can innovate and deploy new systems. A huge part of that speed comes from something called the Brave One Defense Technology Marketplace, a platform that connects frontline soldiers directly with Ukrainian tech companies, so real combat feedback gets turned into a new weapon system almost immediately. We're talking about Ukrainian engineers mounting AK-74 assault rifles directly onto FPV drones. We're talking about fiber-optic, cable-guided drones that are completely immune to Russian signal jammers because there's no wireless signal to jam in the first place. Russia has tried to close this gap through a structure called the Rubicon Center, specifically built to counter Ukraine's drone innovation. But by most accounts, it keeps running into the same wall, a slow, bureaucratic military system trying to chase a country that's fielding a new weapons concept almost every single week, based on live data coming straight from the trenches. There's one more system I need to walk you through because it might be the most important piece of this entire puzzle, the one designed to solve the single biggest problem in modern drone warfare: electronic jamming. GPS jamming has always been the great equalizer in this war. No matter how good your drone is, if you can jam its GPS signal, you can knock it off course. Ukraine just built something that makes that entire tactic irrelevant. It's called the APUS-1, developed by a company called Dark River. This is a fixed-wing interceptor drone built specifically to hunt Russian Shahed-type loitering munitions and reconnaissance drones directly out of the sky. It reaches speeds of up to 320 kilometers per hour, and it destroys its target either through direct kinetic impact or by detonating its own onboard warhead. Here's the part that matters most. The APUS-1 keeps flying and keeps functioning perfectly even when every GPS signal around it is being jammed by Russian electronic warfare. How? It uses advanced optical cameras and digital video transmission for fully autonomous navigation, meaning it doesn't need GPS at all to find and destroy its target. It launches from a catapult system, deployable by just 2 operators in under 5 minutes, and locks onto real-time coordinates fed to it from radar stations, almost like a guided missile, except it costs approximately $3,300, $3,300, replacing million-dollar air defense missiles. Alongside the APUS-1, Ukraine is also fielding automatic mini air defense systems like Counter Drone, capable of autonomously tracking and destroying targets flying up to 300 kilometers per hour with zero human intervention. The APUS-1 itself operates at altitudes up to 4,500 meters, making it the perfect counter to Russian reconnaissance drones searching high in the sky for gaps in radar coverage. Instead of burning through million-dollar Patriot or Iris-T missiles to shoot down a cheap Shahed drone, Ukraine is now doing it for the price of a used car. These systems are currently going through official codification, and once testing wraps up, they're expected to become standard equipment across thousands of Ukrainian frontline units. So here's where I land on all of this. What we're watching happen on the Ukrainian front right now is not just a regional conflict playing out with better technology. It's a preview of how every future war on this planet is going to be fought. Artillery, missiles, and massive armored divisions, the entire foundation of 20th century warfare, are being gradually replaced by AI-supported autonomous systems clashing directly in the sky. Ground-based, net-firing mechanical shields, shotgun-armed drones lying in ambush, waiting for their target to fly directly into a trap. When a soldier on that front line looks up at the sky now, he's not just looking at incoming enemy fire anymore. He's watching algorithms fight each other in real time. And whichever military, whichever nation figures out how to move fastest, how to innovate cheapest, adapt quickest, and field new technology in weeks instead of years, that is the side that's going to define the next century of conflict. Right now, that side is Ukraine. Not because they have more money, not because they have more soldiers, but because a $300 drone with a shotgun bolted to it is proving day after day that it can outmatch a military that's supposed to be the second strongest on Earth. So I want to ask you something before you go. If a country with a fraction of Russia's military budget can build defense systems this effective for a few $100s apiece, what happens when this same technology reaches other conflicts around the world? Is the era of billion-dollar missile defense systems already coming to an end? Let me know what you think in the comments. If you want more reporting like this, clear, direct, no fluff, hit subscribe because we're just getting started here at States Report.